Consider this: art that moves. That's how the Peoria Ballet describes itself, and anyone who's ever seen those dancers in motion would be hard-pressed to disagree. But how do they take that art, which requires such obvious physical discipline and strength, and make it look so effortless and beautiful and graceful? Let's find out. I'm Yvonne Greer, and my guest is Ian Poulos, Artistic Director of the Peoria Ballet. Next on Consider This. To see a ballet dancer grace the stage with such beauty and fluidity and motion often leaves us spellbound as to how they make it look so effortless and so graceful when you know it requires such strength and discipline. My guest here on Consider This is going to shed some light on what it takes to be on that stage and make us all stand in awe. Ian Poulos, welcome to Consider This.
Thank you, Yvonne.
So where does that start?
Oh, where does it start? It starts in everybody's living room. When a kid is growing up, boy or girl, running around they're jumping from couch to couch, running around their room, listening to music, using their imagination, and then it takes a parent to look at that and realize that you have to do something with that and use that energy that they have to make something even more beautiful.
Is that how it started for you?
It did. I was 6. My dad was a big listener of the English rock group called the Moody Blues. Mm-hmm. And Nights in White Satin came on, and I would just dance around the house. And one evening we had a family friend over, and she said to my parents, well, why don't you just take him to a dance class and see what happens? So my mom the next day, before the internet, went to the Yellow Pages and found a local studio, Anita's School of Dance and Theater Arts, I think it was called, mm-hmm. in Long Island. And she said, my son wants to come and check it out and see if it's something that he wants to do. And it was for a 45-minute tap class. So I think it was like a week or so later, my mom took me and we went upstairs to the studio. And I was sitting watching the class. I just wanted to see if it's something I would even consider mm-hmm. doing. And the teacher said, well, he's not going to know if this is what he wants to do unless he wants to get up and do it. So she said, Ian, come on, get up and dance. And I said, well, I don't have any tap shoes. She said, don't worry about it. So this is a true story. She went to her desk, pulled out a pair of old Buster Brown tap shoes. Brown, 3 sizes too big, didn't fit. So my mom reached into her purse, pulled out some tissues, stuffed the toes so my foot wouldn't fall out of my shoe. And for 45 minutes, you couldn't take the smile off my face. And then from there, it just grew. And that's how it all began.
What a great story. I have a few kids that have been in dance in various stages of their lives.
Sure.
And I've been to many, many dance recitals, and
yes.
There aren't a lot of young men and boys in those mm-hmm. classes. Were you the only boy in that class?
Amazingly, I wasn't. There was one other boy, and his mom was actually another teacher at the studio. So it was a built-in camaraderie right away. He was no longer the only boy. Now I was there. Yeah. And so we got to do some cool stuff together growing up for the couple years that I was at that particular studio. While I was there, I really focused on tap. And then I added jazz dance, and I was really fortunate to have a male jazz teacher. Mm-hmm. His name is Orlando Pagan, and he actually danced for a Russian or Ukrainian folk dance troupe at that time. Mm-hmm. And he has his own dance troupe now, and he danced for the Dance Theater of Harlem for a number of years. And I mean, 6, 7, 8-year-old boy having a male teacher with all those muscles and everything. Yeah. I mean, it was the perfect setting. And then the 3rd year of dance, they said, you know, Ian, you need to take ballet because even though you're a great dancer and you're a ham on stage, your coordination is off. And so kicking and dragging and screaming, I took ballet class. But again, I had that same male teacher, which was a great role model for me.
So help us understand the difference in the disciplines. So you're coming from tap, which mm-hmm. we know has the tap shoes,
yes.
and then jazz to ballet.
Yes.
What's the difference in the discipline between how a ballet dancer prepares to perform and how a jazz dancer might prepare to perform?
That's a really good question. You know, I think if you're serious about it, I think the amount of discipline is the same. If you're going to do tap or jazz and want to go the Broadway or the music video route, you still need to be extremely serious. Mm-hmm. I mean, ballet, I think, sometimes has this stigma of it's only for the highfalutin, it's only for the upper crust people. Mm-hmm. But anybody can do it. I mean, we're seeing that today throughout the United States, especially in the United States, anybody who wants to dance can dance here. It's not like when you're in a government-run program as in Russia or France or those type of programs where they pick and choose who they want. So if this is something you want to do, I don't think there's a difference in the amount of discipline that you put towards each thing, towards each art, but I think there's a difference in obviously what tap is and what jazz is and what ballet is, and what you can do with that in your career, I think is where it starts to get different.
And what was it about ballet that made you want to stick with it for 12 years as a professional dancer?
Yeah. So like I said, I started at that small studio, and then I went to another studio for tap and jazz, but I realized that these smaller studios weren't giving me what I needed for ballet. So there was a primary ballet school on Long Island where I lived called Huntington Ballet School, and it was ran by a former Joffrey dancer, Jan Hannaford Getz. And she had this amazing dance career dancing with the Joffrey. And that was really my first taste of ballet as to what I could do with it. She unfortunately had to move, and she shut down her studio. And I went to another ballet school in Long Island called Siyiskia Ballet. And it was run by a 5'0", short Russian Greek woman with a very thick accent. And she pretty much beat me every day and showed me the love of the art. And if it wasn't for her, I don't know if I would have stuck with ballet. I always wanted to be the next Gene Kelly. There was just something about his masculinity and his ability to move and his grace, and I just wanted to be Gene. I wanted to be Gene Kelly. And then you had like James Cagney and Yankee Doodle Dandy, and it's just like, oh my gosh, look at these guys moving, these kings of cinema. But there's something about Valia that really changed my outlook on ballet. And there was another boy there, several boys actually, and she created gold medal winning dancers in these international ballet competitions. So I knew from her I was going to get something that I couldn't get at these smaller local studios that just happened to have ballet on their schedule.
Now, what are your parents thinking as you move through this process?
You know, the thing about my parents is my dad was a bank man. He was a credit analyst. My mom is a retired RN. There was no arts within them.
So this world was pretty foreign to them.
It was pretty foreign. I mean, my aunt, she was a guitarist and folky type singer, but she never pursued it. And apparently my dad's father, who died when he was 3 years old, my dad is from Greece, a very small village on the border of Albania. There's a gorge separating the two countries. And it's the type of those cities that you see on a postcard for Greece. And apparently he was the best singer and dancer of the village, but we don't know. My grandfather is a legend.
Wow.
Literally a legend. We don't know. He's a myth. However, you know, they didn't know anything, and what they thought what they were doing at the time was right. But the more we went from studio to studio and reading the resumes of all the teachers that I had, they started to realize, okay, if he wants to do this professionally, we need to find someone that has been at the top of their game. Not to put down these other teachers, because in their own right they were at the top of their game, but to get to the ballet top, I needed to work with the best ballet people.
Got it.
So my parents were self-educated, and I'm sure my dad must have had many talks with Valia to see, you know, what do we do next, because he needs to be around more boys. You know, it's easy to be the big fish in the small pond, but then when you go away...
It's hard to be competitive unless you're with those that you're competing against.
Right. So, you know, she started suggesting, go to these summer intensives, get with other boys that are your age, but still come back because I have a lot more to teach you. But then it got to a point where, I don't want to say Valia taught me everything, but I needed male teachers every day. And going to these summer intensives, whether it's School of American Ballet that's connected with the New York City Ballet, or American Ballet Theater's summer intensive, or just a number of these summer intensives that are around the country. Being in a class with a bunch of boys and a male teacher just yelling at you every day to do better, there was just something about that I needed every day.
Okay.
So when it came to my high school years, I went to a boarding school program in Washington, D.C., the Kirov Academy of Ballet, where I got exactly what I needed every day. It was pretty much ballet boot camp. Yeah.
So you know now that you're on the path that you want to be on professionally, which is a gift in and of itself, because most kids, even in high school, are still wondering, what am I going to be when I grow up?
Right.
did you plan to become an artistic director of a ballet company, or did you intend to go as long as you could as a dancer?
I knew that when I was about 15, I had an injury that took me out of dancing for about 3 months. It was a growing pain injury, but it was treated as an injury as if somebody broke their leg or something. You just have to wait it out and do the rehab to get back into the studio. So during that time, one of my teachers, Mr. Kucheruk, he said, okay, well, you need to sit and watch class every day. You can't just not be in the studio. I said, okay. And then, I don't know if it was a punishment to me or a punishment to my classmate, he said, I don't want to look at this one anymore. You go take care of him. But at the same time, he was still watching what I was doing. So for those 3 months, I was working one-on-one with my classmate, correcting him and sitting next to him and saying, do this better, or maybe try this, do this.
Okay.
And that's when my eye got trained to be like, okay, I can do this on another level. I could lead a class, I could be a teacher. But I knew to get to that level, I needed to have a career to back it up. So I knew I needed to have a professional career. And yes, I still wanted to be a professional dancer, but I knew to get to that leadership role of being a ballet master and artistic director, I needed to go through these.
You had to go through it to do it.
Pay my dues.
Yeah.
And so I danced professionally for 12 years with 5 different companies throughout the United States. I got to tour Asia, Canada, and all over the US. I got to perform at the Kennedy Center. I mean, that was on my bucket list.
Yes.
And when I had that moment on the Kennedy Center, I mean, I got very emotional. I mean, that was a stamp of approval. You made it. And that was such a magical experience in my career. It was awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank
Not
you.
a lot of people get to have those moments. I'm sure that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what was all of that like on your body outside of the injury and the growing pain injury you said you experienced? Because we've seen shows sometimes where they have, the dancers who don't eat enough and they're icing their feet all of the time. How much of that is real?
It's very real. It's just that when you have it on camera and you only get to see that show for a half hour a week, they make it all about that.
Yes.
That's just a slice of what happens. I mean, I was very fortunate. The only injuries I had were aches and pains and maybe a pulled muscle here and there. I never had the big breaks that a lot of dancers have that have to go get knee replacements, hip replacements, ankle surgeries, and all these, cortisone shots and things that are just Band-Aids. I was very fortunate, but it's very real and alive in the dance world.
So you went from dancer to choreographer. How did you make that jump?
I was doing that while I was dancing. When I first got my job in Indianapolis, I was a dancer. I was 18 years old, signed my first contract. I didn't go the college route because the dancer's career is very short. So during that time while I was dancing, I went to the vice principal of the school and said, I want to start teaching. I want to, shape the next generation. I said, well, there's nothing on the schedule, but we have a class of 30 boys that needs an assistant. And it was a program called Athletes in Motion. It had nothing to do with dance. It was just to get boys in the door. And we had 30 boys, and I started out as a teacher's assistant. And then the following year, he trusted me enough that said, okay, now you take the best from that class, and let's put them into boys' dance. Let's not call it ballet yet. So during those times when you're a teacher's assistant, when you're a teacher, you have to choreograph dances for your students.
So tell me about the curriculum that you employed for those boys if it wasn't a dance program.
It was pretty much probably what people consider CrossFit training these days.
Okay.
It was a lot of calisthenics, sit-ups, push-ups, jumping jacks, getting the heart rate going.
Okay.
Doing running drills or galloping, but using ballet
And watching
steps,
them with a dancer's eye.
Right, and using ballet steps, but not using the French terminology. So it was this whole mind game that me and the teacher would play on them.
Pretty sneaky.
Yeah, but we had 30 boys, and most of them stuck through for the 3 years until the company unfortunately closed down. But back to your question about choreography, during that time, I was choreographing on my students. And I saw an opportunity where I said to the vice principal of the school, can I do a piece on my own with some advanced level students? And it was probably about an 8 to 9 minute short ballet. I was into vampires at the time. My dad and I are big vampire fans. He was into Anne Rice, I was into Bram Stoker. So it was my own concoction of what I thought vampires were. But it gave me the first taste of that instant gratification from the audience that they liked it. And it gave me that light bulb and went off. So I went to the director of the professional ballet company and said, I have an idea that I would like to do. Tell me what you think. He said, well, you need to show me something first. I can't just give you $500,000 budget and say, go make a ballet, you're only 20 years old. You know, there's a lot of risk in arts. And unfortunately, that day never got to come to fruition because of financial reasons. The company shut down. But through my career, I kept teaching. It gave me that outlet to choreograph on students. When I joined the Louisville Ballet, they had what they called a choreographic workshop. And then I was able to work with professional dancers. And
Clouds parted, angels sang, all of that good stuff.
I'm sorry?
Clouds parted, angels sang, all of that.
Yes. And working with professional dancers just allows you to use a vocabulary that you can't use on students because they don't know it yet, as far as dance terminology. It allows you to do things that are more mature that you can't do with students because they're students. And I made two really different pieces. Everybody else on the program wanted to do all this contemporary, edgy things. And I said, no, I'm going back to the beginning. And the first piece I did was a Georgian character piece in honor of my teacher that was at the Kirov Academy, Mr. Giulicazzi. He was from Georgia. And it was a Georgian character piece with 3 men and 3 women. And the type of choreography that I made the men do, the crowd just erupted. I mean, you got 3 men, they're jumping, they're turning, they're doing everything. It was fantastic. The second year, after my dad passed in 2008, I always wanted to honor him somehow. And he was a very proud Greek man. And you're going to get me. And the famous Greek dances, they're sirtaki. You got the bouzouki playing with percussion. And there was a ballet that was created probably in the 80s, I would say, Zorba the Greek. And the music was by Mikis Theodorakis. And I took 2 pieces, 2 selections from that ballet and made it my own ballet, and I called it Memories of My Father's Land.
Wow.
And I had one of my best friends, Philip Velanov, portray, whether it was me or my father, it's still very unclear. It could be interpreted in many different ways, this ballet. And he was just, holding the Greek flag, doing the Greek steps, and then he sits down on a chair and his memories start to come to life, and all these dancers just come in screaming Opa and slapping the floor and doing the Greek traditional dances. And then at the end, he comes into his memory and he fully commits himself to his Greek heritage. And it was just a really great moment to honor my father, and a really great moment to work with such dancers that understood what this meant to me. And it's one of the pieces of choreography that I did that helped me to get where I am today as an artistic director. Peoria Ballet, when they hired me, they said, we want to see what you've done. And it hit everybody on the board on a different emotional level, and they saw my heart. After Louisville, I was picked up by the Kansas City Ballet. I danced there for 2 years, and I got to create 2 more pieces. And my final piece that I created the year that I retired was called Reflections, a Culmination. And basically, it was it's set to music by Brahms, string sextet. And it was basically every mentor that I had throughout my career was in that piece. Whether it was Ebe Anderson from Arizona, whether it was Eldar Aliyev from Indianapolis, whether it was Bill Weintner from Kansas City, or all my mentors, my teachers, all my directors, they were all part of that piece in some way through the choreography. And it just was a fantastic way to end my performing career, but to move me into the next step of my career as a choreographer, teacher, and a director.
And what a beautiful human experience to be able to express through your art.
Yeah.
Is that sort of, I don't know, a soundtrack to who you are, being able to put your heart on stage through the dance?
When you get to do pieces like that where you're not held to a fairy tale or a book or a story that you have to follow, you can really show who you are as a person. When you're doing something like a Nutcracker or Sleeping Beauty, the story is already done, and you're just trying to recreate it. When you're creating something from nothing, in my opinion, I think it's easier to show who you are. Now, that's not to say when you're dancing a role that has been written in a fairy tale like a Sleeping Beauty that you can't interpret it in your own way. But as a creator of a whole piece, I like to sit and just listen to music and see what it means to me. And right now I'm sitting on a piece by Stravinsky, his Ebony Concerto, that has been choreographed many times, but I want my own stab at it. I just have to wait for the right time and the right dancers to come to me. And that is what's annoying as a creator, to waiting for that moment, because you want to do it now. You want to see what it looks like.
That is an interesting experience that I don't think most of us get to enjoy. So you hear music, obviously, with a different ear, because in your head you're dancing to that music, or you see people dancing to that music.
I don't think I would say I hear it. I think I see it.
You see it.
I see the music.
And then who do you see with the music around them?
Really?
How do you know when the dancer has come to you?
When you're in your professional setting, I think it's a little easier to do that, because you're working with people that have had a bunch of a life experience. So in the professional setting, you sit and you watch class and you can see how a professional dancer takes class. Everybody takes the same class, but they all take it different. They do what they need to do for that day. They're a little achy, they may modify things, but you see who they are as a person. In the student realm, everybody's doing the same class every day, and as a teacher, you need them to take the same class the same way, because you're building not only an individual dancer, you're building a team that can go on stage and feel and dance with each other in a way that's uniform. And then, right now, I'm creating dancers. It's up to that dancer to become an artist. And dancers and artists are two very different things. Anybody can do steps that's trained, but to take those steps and to interpret in such a way that it makes it yours or creates what the choreography wants, that's when I think there's a crossover to artist. So I have some very mature students right now that I'm able to do some things with, but there's some subject matter that I can't touch with them because they're students.
Now you've got a 50th anniversary
Yes, we do.
celebration coming up. Tell me about that.
Oh boy, it's a huge, huge thing. I mean, there's probably only a dozen or so companies and schools throughout the United States that can say that they're 50 years old, and Peoria Ballet is one of them. Peoria Ballet has a rich history in the arts. I mean, we have the symphony that's over 138 years old now, and we have a ballet that's 50 years old. We had an opera for a very extended period of time. We have the Heartland Festival Orchestra that is in its 6th or 7th year now, and they're just doing so well. I mean, Peoria has a lot of arts going on right now, and I'm hoping that it continues to grow with everything that's happening in downtown Peoria in the next decade or so. Peoria needs to know that the arts are alive and well, especially in ballet. So we're having this 50th anniversary gala performance towards the end of April. We're trying to zone in on April 30th. And what I'm trying to do is bring back dancers and choreography from the last 20 years to celebrate the Peoria Ballet. It's not all about me. I just have a title. It's my job to preserve the past and to move forward into the future with new ideas, new concepts.
And what a fabulous concept that is. And I apologize because I feel like I could talk to you all day long, and we are just about out of time.
Oh, wow, already.
Please give folks a phone number or an email address or a website, rather, where they can get in touch with you and find out how they can come and attend the performance.
Yeah, so we have our in-house box office, 309-690-7990, or you can go to peoriaballet.com or .org, and we are on Twitter at twitter.com/Peoria Ballet.
You're everywhere. I love that,
yes.
too.
And Instagram.
Ian Poulos, director of the Peoria Ballet, thank you so much for your time and
Thank
your
you,
energy
Ron.
and your magnificent work on stage. We
Thank you so
appreciate it
much.
very much. And we appreciate you being here on Consider This. And now ask you to take a moment and take a look at our featured artist of the week.
When I was a kid, I did draw a lot of cars. I drew a lot of military stuff. And actually, now that I think about it, I used to build models when I was a kid. So I built a lot of little models, the little plastic models, paint them, glue them, and eventually when you grow up, you get to build big models. I'm more than just a painter. I fabricate as well. We do fiberglass work, the pinstripe and the airbrushing. A lot of painters don't get off into those extra fields. I did it out of necessity because it cuts my neediness down for someone else. If I can do some of this work, I don't need to take it somewhere else and get it finished. I can finish everything in-house. The process of building a car, it almost has to start with being art. You have to appreciate it as a piece of art. So the mechanics come secondary. So you have to have a vision, and you have to have a goal, and then you see how to build it. Then you figure that out. Then you figure out how am I going to build this, because at the end, you're trying to build a piece of art. It's metal, it's a metal canvas, but it's art, so you have to start out with art and you have to finish with art. So the mechanics are in the middle. You just have to figure out how to build it. If you ever went to a car show, the competition level is pretty high. So you have to be that type of person. You have to be driven. You have to be goal-oriented. You have to have passion for this, because there's guys out there that eat, sleep cars. So there's a guy working on the car right now, and I'm doing an interview. There's a guy 4 in the morning working on his car for a show. So, in that sense, people don't sleep. Everyone's working to be the best. So you have to keep that in mind if you're trying to compete. The reaction to my artwork in another town as far as the cars and bikes goes is tremendous. So they're very surprised when they find out I'm from a small town in Illinois, kicking out work on that level. So the work has made major magazines for the last 15 years. Even magazines in Japan, we hadn't even translated them yet, but the pictures of some of the cars I've done are in there. I do see some cars and bikes I've done in the past and drive by, and it always catches my eye, which means I've done something right. I did it right.
Thanks again for being with us. I'm Yvonne Greer on Consider This.